This time last night, Donald Trump seemed very, very happy with things in the Middle East indeed. He put this message out on Truth Social, saying how absolutely delighted he was to announce that there'd been a ceasefire. It was happening, congratulating everyone. The Iranians have agreed. The Israelis have agreed. There's going to be a ceasefire. It's all over. And in future, in history, we'll refer to it as the 12-day war. It's all over. I thought, wow, this is very, very exciting. But it wasn't long before it was broken. The Israelis fired some rockets, saying that the Iranians had fired one first. As Donald Trump was about to leave America today to go to The Hague for a big NATO international security get-together, this was his response to the Israelis in the USA.
Not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, OK, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Now, I shouldn't laugh because it's serious stuff in the Middle East, but it's a little bit difficult not to. But it does seem to me the significance of that anger is that Israel absolutely desperately needs the support of the American president. And frankly, to have upset them is not very clever. To get a response to that, I'm joined by Brigadier General Cooper Wasa, former Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Brigadier General, thank you for joining me on the programme. The point I'm making is that Israel doesn't have that many friends at the moment. So why did they break the ceasefire that the American president was so proudly boasting of?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And we didn't break the ceasefire. We responded to a break of the ceasefire by the Iranians after the ceasefire. About 2 hours and a half after the ceasefire, the Iranians launched a missile towards northern Israel. And there was a need to make it clear to the Iranians that this is unacceptable. And the way to send this message was to hit back. And then President Trump interfered and asked us to calm down. And because, as you said, we don't have that many friends, we have to keep this friendship and we cherish it. We decided to calm it down and we just hit a small target in near Tehran just to send the message and came back home.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that what the president was really saying is that two wrongs don't make a right. But how do you see, that happened yesterday. There's been nothing since, at least that's as I understand it. What is the situation right now? Is there a genuine ceasefire for the moment or not?
Yes, I think there is a genuine ceasefire, and that's one thing that's important. But even more important is what happened before the ceasefire. What happened is that together with the Americans, we were able to put an end to the Iranian capability to produce nuclear weapons. This is great news for the security of Israel, but also for the security of the international community and for the Americans and for the British and for everybody else to know that after so many years that we were under the shadow of this threat, we put an end to this capability of the Iranians to produce nuclear weapons. And this was not easy. The Iranians have built such a huge program to build this nuclear weapon that dealing with it required quite a lot of effort. And we needed the Americans to do some of the job because some of these facilities were built deep underground.
Yeah.
So together with the Americans, we send a message to the Middle East and to the rest of the world that when we are determined to deal with these kind of threats, we are able to do that. And I think this is very important for the Iranians to know that if they are going to try again to build a nuclear weapon, we won't wait until the last moment as we did this time. We shall intervene very early.
That message is loud and clear. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening on the programme. I'm joined in the studio by Sir Ranald Jayawardena, former Conservative MP and Minister, and Joe Phillips, journalist and former spin doctor. Do you think the Americans were right to support the Israelis?
No.
You don't?
No, I think Trump's being played by Netanyahu. There was nothing to suggest that Iran was any closer to having a nuclear capability than it was 2 weeks ago. And I think Netanyahu needed something to distract the world from what's going on in Gaza. Don't forget, he's been warning about Iran for decades. And it was Trump who pulled out of the agreement with Iran.
Good, the idiotic agreement that allowed them to fund all the terrorist organisations. Moronic agreement.
But it allowed people to go in and check what was going on.
What we do know, Joe, is that uranium had been enriched way beyond that needed for nuclear power.
But there was no direct threat to Israel.
Well, I think it was the right thing to do.
But you see, you've now got... Who was meeting with Putin yesterday? Iran's foreign minister. Where does Trump sit amongst his warmongering friends?
I don't know. We know that Trump has recognised Iran as the major threat in the Middle East, going right back to 2015 when he first launched his presidency. Did you support the action, Randall?
With regret, yes. Look, we've got to be really careful about escalation. That's not in anyone's interest. It's not in ours. It's not in the interest of our allies in the region. But, and this is the big but, they have been the funders. The Iranian regime have been the funders of Hamas. They've been the funders of Hezbollah. They've been the funders of the Houthis in Yemen. They have been behind so many of the troubles faced by our allies in the region, and indeed the consequences of those problems further afield. So the regime in Iran has been a problem for a long time, dare I say, dating back to when George Bush Jr. was in the White House, and clearly he chose a different
we've
war.
Made an awful lot of mistakes over the
Exactly.
But let's just move this on, because here was the Prime Minister today talking about this extraordinary pledge of saying he's going to commit to 5% of our spending on defence by 2035.
We'll now make commitments, our NATO commitments, to 5%. That includes a resilience element that we're already spending, but it is important that we make that commitment for the long-term security of our country. We had a commitment, to reassure your viewers, in our manifesto that we wouldn't raise taxes on working people, and we intend to keep to that commitment.
So this 5% includes resilience and security, which I assume means even the fire service will count towards defence. I think this is absolute nonsense that is being said ahead of him going to meet Donald Trump in The Hague. I do not believe an absolute word of it. Love to get your thoughts at home. Do you believe him? Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I don't believe a word of it. Do you, Joe?
I think if you incorporate resilience, what does that mean? Because resilience, it's food security. It's a healthy country, a healthy nation. We haven't got either of those things. We're seeing, farmland being sold off and built on. We've got unhealthy people. The health service is suffering from the strain on it of unhealthy people. We haven't got resilience. We can't even run trains. We can't build infrastructure. And that's you can laugh, Ronald, but a lot of it is a legacy of your government.
I'll come back to you in a second. I've been very kind to you. Just
oh, no, you haven't.
You don't believe that 5%? No one believes it.
No, it's nonsense. The truth is that we saw reports last week or the week before about broadband spend being part of this defence spend. We've seen that Chagos is going to come out of this, the handover, the surrender of British sovereign territory to a Chinese ally. They've not got a plan, sadly, on this. I will credit them on the need for greater resilience in this country. That is important, and it is important they have recognised that there needs to be more protection of the UK homeland. Not just in terms of military spend, but think about our critical national infrastructure, electricity, water. This country could be taken out if the opposition was to get into our water system and control it, right?
Talk of Thames Water being sold to a Chinese company.
Well,
as an example,
and electricity, being sold to French companies. But this you can't put at Keir Starmer's doorstep.
No. This goes back further.
It does go back further.
But just something there. You've been observing these things for a couple of years. Just the way he looked. He was saying something he clearly didn't believe in himself. And it seems to me that maybe the one big claim that he thought he had was that he was doing well on the world stage. And even that's now pretty questionable. Maybe I'm wrong. That just looked to me like the clip of a Prime Minister in some deep trouble. Well,
I think he's exhausted, Nigel. I think, to be fair, and I think there is always a challenge for a Prime Minister who is spending a lot of time abroad and not dealing with what's going on here because, most people are more concerned about what's happening down the road than they are what's happening in Iran. And I think that is always a conundrum that faces anybody. And he has been absolutely round the houses. You know, he's been dealing with Trump, he's been dealing with NATO, he's been dealing with Europe, all of those things, Ukraine, etc. So I think you have to give him credit that he's managed to be quite calm and sensible in treading that tightrope.
Was that 5% speech sensible?
No, I think but the problem is that what I expected from Keir Starmer, and I think a lot of people did, was OK, he was going to be, you know, Clement Attlee Mark II to Boris Johnson's, you know, Poundland Churchill, if you like, but somebody really boring, but he'd just get on with the job. You've got to have a grown-up conversation with the people of this country, and that does mean saying, you know, if we are going to do this, it's going to cost X, or you're going to have to go without this. But you can't...
But the timing of this, of course, was because he's about to meet Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And Trump's been saying 5%.
Yes.
Trump says 5%, not expecting anyone to go to 5%, but thinking perhaps they go to 3.5%.
But he's right to say that Europe should spend more, Britain should spend more.
And he's not the first president to say that.
Exactly.
all done it.
He's
Yeah.
just Obama with Biden.
Yeah.
But you're right, Joe, that, you know, we've got to have that honest conversation that you can't afford the welfare bill, which keeps going up and up and up, and, you know, potentially they're going to backtrack. They scrapped our reforms. They're proposing something that's slightly less good, but won't be palatable still to their backbenchers. Let's see what happens.
But as Prime Minister, you have to say things, Randall, that are credible.
Yes.
They can be unpalatable,
Yes.
but they have to be credible.
Yeah.
I just don't think the way he looked, and Joe made a point, he's probably very... And you know, I get that on a human level. I think that was a credible speech.
Well, he's not got the evidence to back it up. This is correct. And also, just on the point of him being tired, look, he'd never served as a minister ever before. So perhaps he's just unprepared for what has faced him in that office. This isn't a personal attack on him. This is just an observation.
And he is not a natural communicator. I mean, you know, he looks wooden. He looks as though somebody's given him something to read. There is no passion or commitment. On the other hand, he wasn't quite as oleaginous as Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary-General, who could not have been further into Donald Trump's trousers with his, we're basically going to do what you want.
But maybe that's better together. But maybe that's better than President Macron, who basically says that what the Americans did in Iran on Saturday night was illegitimate. He's on the verge of recognising independent Palestine, which would be a reward to Hamas. Is that really very sensible?
I think Europe has got to recognise that the US at the moment under Trump is not a reliable ally.
Really?
Because he is
Do you really think?
Yeah, I do.
Do you really think the Americans are not a reliable NATO ally?
No, I don't.
Well, I couldn't disagree with you more.
Well, there you go. That's why I'm here.
I think, well, that's a fair point. And it is GB News.
Yeah, exactly.
And we are the home of free speech in Britain, but hopefully done in a relatively civilised way. I would argue back, Joe, I would say that actually, I think Donald Trump did NATO a huge amount of good in his first term. I think the fact that he threatened them meant they did increase their defence spending.
Yeah,
and they're going on doing
all
that.
of that is fine, and I think it was a wake-up call. But, you know, and I think it's, as we said, it goes right back to Kennedy and through every successive American president. Yeah. And it's quite right that everybody's been going, oh, it's fine, nothing to worry about. And that's fine. Sometimes you can shake the tree, sometimes you can shake things up. But we have seen that Trump changes his mind from 1 minute to the next. 1 minute he's backing Putin, the next minute he's backing Israel, then he's shouting at
they are
Israel.
Negotiations.
No, they're
and
not.
Negotiations go back and go forth.
No, they're not negotiations, Nigel. Negotiations are what grown-ups do.
Well,